Welcome to CPG Vibes. No scripts,
just chat.
I'm Alex Baer.
And I'm Wade Yenny.
Each episode is recorded live, and we talk all things food and beverage, and so much more.
Feel our vibe and search for CPG Vibes on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and make sure to give us a 5-star review.
If you'd like to sponsor our show with your product or service, email us at cpgvibes100@gmail.com.
Now, let's vibe.
All right, welcome to episode 153 of CPG Vibes. This is our the first volume of our buyer series. We decided to kind of venture off into new different series to have some fun, get more information, bring on some awesome guests. So we're very excited for our first edition of the buyer series, especially the fact that Wade used to be a buyer for a number of years. I won't say how many years. I don't want to put double digits on you, but it is double digits. So Wade, how's it going, buddy?
I'm doing good. I think it was a day or two. It seems like forever ago, actually. The time, I've been calculating the time that I've been gone. I'm coming up quickly on being gone a year. So it's hard to believe. Time flies when you're having fun.
Exactly right. So for those that don't know, and if you don't know, now you know. So you were with Rouse's, you're with Jimbo's, you're with Fresh Market. Anything I'm missing?
Bueller's.
And Bueller's.
Yep.
So a decorated career on the buyer side, and he's going to share, I'm sure, a lot of good information along with our guests. And our guest for this great episode we're super excited about is Robert Johnson. He's the retail category manager for New Seasons Market. And Kenny Hausmann, right? The CPG Vibes tribe guy that's on almost every episode and commenting. We love Kenny, and so we just had to bring him on. We love to bring him on. He's a director of merchandising for natural living at Thyme Market. So we'll be bringing him on around the 10 to 15 mark, depending on how much we talk and how much we blab. So we'll get going, and so the sooner that we can end us talking, the sooner we can bring them on. So a couple laundry list items to talk about. Number one, we are the number one rated CPG podcast in the world. Make sure to keep it that way. Go to Apple Podcast or Spotify and give us 5 stars. We're in a kind of heated race with another fellow across the aisle CPG podcast. So make sure to keep us number one. We've held that spot for a long time. Keep us there. Make sure to give us 5 stars. Please, it takes 5 seconds. You just log in on your iPhone or your Android, and you go to Apple Podcast or Spotify, and you tap 5 stars. And we have the orange logo just like our back wall here. And speaking of our back wall, we have a new sponsor that just came in, which is Dream Makers, and that is Jeff company. And we have the logo up here. He's going to be rotating in some of his brands. So
Alex,
thank you, Jeff Church.
I was going to say, you had to say it because you actually broke up there. I heard Jeff, but I didn't hear the last name. So I was going to tell you to make sure you get the sponsor because you said Jeff and then it skipped. So Jeff Church, thank you, Jeff.
Yes. And I guess I spoke too soon. I was thinking my internet would be fantastic. I got a visit from the cable guy, and he upgraded all the modems, the routers, the wires, but I guess it's already cutting out. I may need to switch over. So we'll see. If it keeps cutting out, let me know. But Dream Makers, Jeff Church, thank you for sponsoring. And he has an accelerator program that you can check out by going to his website, and you can just Google Dream Makers Jeff Church, and you will find his page, and you can sign up for it. It's very affordable, and you learn a lot of information, so it's good. Now, our weekly sponsor is the one and only Robert Kogan with Powerful Energy Distribution. A little bit about him and about his company. PFE, short for Powerful Energy, is a binational company that handles imports, exports for commodity brands and emerging specialty brands. PFE's expertise is eliminating the real and invisible barriers to the 40 million person Canadian market, starting with the 8 million Ontario market right next door. So if you like to get your product into Canada, you're a US brand, he knows everything about it. He's been doing this for, according to his LinkedIn, for 17 years. Just make sure to reach out. Just go to LinkedIn, click on Robert Kogan, Kogan, and message him, and you can find out more information. He carries a lot of amazing brands I mean, there's just mentioning some here: Seven Teas, Melting Forest, Perfy Soda, Sizzle Soda. He's getting into the soda category, Wade, in a big way. Gelato Water. Haven't heard of that, but that sounds interesting. Dope Coffee, Old Time Soda, and some other ones as well. So make sure to reach out to Robert Kogan. Thank you for sponsoring. The prize on this episode also is going to be two mixed cases of the Melting Forest, 3 cans of De-Stress, which we all need, and 3 cans, of the Energy line. So make sure to pay attention. Something that Robert says or Kenny says. We're going to be asking you that question at the end. If you guess right, you win the prize for Melting Forest delivered straight to your door. The only other thing to mention, again, we were speeding through this so we can get our guests on as quickly as possible because you want to hear from them more than you want to hear from us. Trust me on that one. Is we have our Newswire, which is brand new. It's the CPG Vibes Newswire. 2 to 3 times per week, we're posting a news update from the CPG arena, right? Anything, whether it's the Olipop raise for $50 million, whether it's a brand that unfortunately shut down, whether it's industry news about Expo West, anything and everything will be on the CPG Vibes Newswire, which goes straight to your phone. It updates, it's 5 minutes and under, and gives you just what you need about news happening right here, right now in the CPG community. So make sure to log on to that CPG Vibes and check it on your phone. It updates once every few days with new news items. So Wade, I don't know. I mean, I know this is a brand new program. Have you heard any feedback?
Not yet.
Nothing. Okay, that's what I expect.
No news is good news, Alex.
No news is very good news in this day and age. So, but if you have any feedback on it, email us at cpgvibes100@gmail.com. If you'd like to be a sponsor and get a block rate, email us cpgvibes100@gmail.com. We have our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@ can't forget the @ CPG Vibes, and then we're gonna have our live show at Expo West on Wednesday. That's going to be the first day of the show at the Melting Forest booth in Hall E. I believe it's 5219, but I'll get confirmation on that. And we're going to be there for a couple hours doing our live show. So make sure to stop by, and we'll get the time for you because Wade, we haven't planned for anything. We don't know the time yet. Anything else before we bring on our guests here?
Let's bring on those rock stars. Let's go.
Let's do it. Okay. So I will not make a long introduction here. It's going to be very short. We are bringing on 2 guests here. We have Robert Johnson. He's the retail category manager for New Seasons Market. And Kenny Hausmann. He's the director of merchandising, natural living for Fresh Thyme Market. And I'll get a little bit of music going here. I think this one's good. Let's turn it up. All right. How you guys doing?
Yo,
what's happening?
Welcome, fellas.
All right, welcome to our show. So Kenny's been on here a few times. This is a first time, long time, right? With Robert. And Robert, I love your LinkedIn posts, especially the ones where you're walking. I love those. A lot of good ideas flow, and thank you for promoting the show on there and telling people you're going to be on it, and that means a lot. So, do you go on these kind of daily walks as a part of your daily ritual, or?
Yeah, it's a little bit newer. I was doing the 75 hard challenge, and you have to fit in 2 workouts a day. So I wanted to get the most out of it because we're busy people, right? So I wanted to really just put myself out there and do something different. I knew video was something I wanted to kind of dabble in, so I just started making them.
Awesome. It's working. I mean, you got a lot of views on it and a lot of comments, and keep sharing. They're working for sure. And I mean, if Mark Samuel can share himself shirtless, and talking about stuff, then I think we can all share something on LinkedIn, right?
That's
all right.
A very good point.
Very good. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with you. We'll go around the small virtual room we have here just to introduce yourself, and and we have a tradition on the show which we will continue on this one, which is sharing one thing about yourself that the public does not know about you. So Robert, we're gonna start with you. Welcome to our show.
Cool. Yeah, so I've been in grocery since high school. I started in junior year, so probably pretty similar story to a lot of people in here, or at least Kenny. I know him and I share that path of starting pretty young. And for me, started at a local retailer, was bagging groceries, stocking shelves, and then worked my way up. Got to a point where that retailer felt like it was kind of crumbling, so I jumped ship, started over at New Seasons, and that was just a little over 14 years ago. I started over working freight crew and worked my way up again to where I'm at now.
Cool. And then
Um,
and one thing about you that we don't. Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna pull deep down on this one. So I just shared this with my community the other day, but I was very close to not graduating high school because I was a slacker, and not that I didn't get all the information or understand it. It's just I didn't do the work, and I think that I've been pushing on stories a lot lately, so I just wanted to share that you can make it in life. You don't have to follow the certain path that everybody thinks you have to. But very successful. I'm happy with my family and what I'm doing here, and it doesn't mean anything that I was that close to not graduating.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a whole other conversation, but
Yeah.
challenging. I'm a big fan of kind of shaking things up, challenging the norm and doing something different. And usually the ones that can go through that stage of fear and get to the other side by challenging what everyone's telling you to do are usually the most successful and also the happiest, right? Because you're doing it the way you want to do it and what rings true to yourself and your spirit. So I love hearing stories like that. It's awesome. Kenny, welcome. Welcome back, I should say.
Hey, good to be here with you fellas. I'm always excited to jump on the show. Super stoked to share with the community here today and be here with Robert. So folks, I think most folks know me, but I'll keep my story relatively brief. Similar to Robert, I grew up through this industry from a way of a part-time job at my local grocer. I was a cart retrieval specialist through high school. And then in the early years of college, I discovered the world of category management merchandising, and I was hooked. I figured out what I wanted to do. Wasn't necessarily part of the plan, but it inspired me. So I kept on going. And I can tell you this industry has given me a lot of great opportunities. I've got close to 20 years. I've been around the world, Chicago, the South, even Hawaii. I was there for a couple of years. Now I'm back in Chicago and currently having a lot of fun in my current role. So I'm the director of merchandising for Natural Living. So I have the distinct pleasure of leading our Natural Living merchant team, which consists of vitamins, supplements, body care, and non-foods. And those who know in the natural space, this is a really key area of business for us. So just super stoked to be a part of it. For me, what folks may not know about me is I used to actually play in a band when I used to live in Buffalo. Oh. So I actually tried to play guitar. Wasn't really good, but the good news is when you play late out in bars and there's a few drinks involved, everyone sounds good. So that's kind of might be a fun fact that some folks don't know about me.
And what kind of band was this, Kenny?
We played everything, Wade, from everything from like rock to pop. We were actually a duo. We did something kind of unique. So we always found like the dynamic between myself and the lead singer was really strong. But when we would add anyone else in the mix, it would just upset the apple cart. So what we did was we actually created backing tracks that we would record and perform ourselves. And we did everything from like the Beatles to Justin Timberlake. It was a pretty wide catalog.
Nice.
Is there like a YouTube video of you performing out there?
There very well could be if you dig it up. Not on this show though.
Did you have a stage name, or was it just Kenny Hausmann, or do you have a certain name on stage? Like,
yeah, it was just Kenny Hausmann. I'll tell you though, there's just something about performance, right, that just energizes you. Like for me, I mean, we're in the service industry, being in grocery. I just love hospitality, and I just like making people happy. So the opportunity to play music and let folks kind of unwind on a weekend day or any given night, you gave me a lot of joy just to watch people.
I love that. So Kenny, if this whole thing doesn't work out today, I see Robert's got a couple of guitars on the wall. Maybe we can get the band back together. But that kidding aside, we've got to get started on this because we've got a lot of people watching. We got a lot of questions, and I've got to reward our buddy Gavin because he was the first one here. He has the first question in, and this is for both of you. So Kenny, we'll start with you. He says when he worked at Fresh Thyme, and before I get into this question, I want to preface this by saying, just for those of you joining us, Kenny and Robert aren't going to give specific details as it pertains to fresh time and new seasons. It's just gonna be general advice from their perspectives. Okay. And I want to, we're honoring them for being on the show, and we're not going to divulge anything specific as it pertains to their markets. Okay. So just generally speaking. But Gavin says when he worked at Fresh Time, our boss, who will remain nameless, would kick us out and scope out competition in the market, look for innovation, merchandising, pricing, etc. His list in no particular order at the time was Jewel Osco, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Walmart, Meijer, Hy-Vee, Standard Market, Meijer, he said twice, shame on you, Gavin, Kroger, etc. In your neck of the woods today now, Robert and Kenny, who do you look to for inspiration and why? So, Kenny, we'll start with you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of those competitors, because I work at Fresh Time, right? Those are the competitors that I walk today. In terms of inspiration, you really get out of the state, right? There's a lot of innovation happening on the West Coast, with the Air Ones of the world. And that's what's so exciting about going to Expo. We actually take a day to take our merchants out to hit the market. Because if we just stay within our kind of trade area, well, we're never going to understand what could be out there. So it's really a lot of the retailers on the West Coast, very much focused on some of the smaller natural independents. I know your alma mater, Wade, Jimbo's, have a high amount of respect for what they do and their model, even New Seasons. I really enjoy New Seasons. And I'm not just saying that as Robert is here. I think they just threaded the difficult needle of really, staying true to what the roots are, more natural forward, but yet they have this kind of shopping experience that truly meets the customer where they're at too along that journey, which is kind of where we take some inspiration from, what I take inspiration from as a merchant. Even on the East Coast too, Wegmans, they inspire me just through all the things that they do through private label and merchandising, and even getting outside my four-wall brick and mortar box online. E-com retailers too. We got to pay attention to that as well, especially in the categories I currently play in. There's a lot of e-com presence out there, so you have to be aware of what's going on around you across all channels.
Good stuff. Robert, how about you?
Yeah, I think in our market, there's a few retailers that kind of stand out for different reasons. So, when I think innovation and inspiration, I probably lean towards there's Zupan, which is a little bit smaller market, but they're pretty quick, and Market of Choice are pretty quick to get some up and coming items into their sets. And we have a Market of Choice actually a block from our store support office, so it's easy to walk through and kind of see what's going on there. But then we really look at Whole Foods still for very basic things, but to Kenny's point, getting outside of our market is really important. So I really like going up to our sister company, Metropolitan Market. It's a quick drive for us up, a couple hours, and we can get into some new stores. We see what they're doing merchandising wise and innovative product and things like that. We're still getting in a rhythm of actually being tighter as far as, how our buyers and their buyers are working together. So that's something that is still, it's not necessarily a competitor, but it is a different market and retailer that I can get into and actually get some good information from.
Excellent.
Yeah, I do have a question. Because what I notice, especially in a lot of the natural specialty stores, is the vibe. There's a vibe when you go in there and you feel good. And I told the story to Kenny. I forget if it was offline or online on LinkedIn, but I visited a Fresh Time in Chicago, and coincidentally, it was for the Specialty Coffee Expo. So I visited a Fresh Time for the first time last year, and then 2 years ago I visited a New Seasons in Portland when they had the Specialty Expo there for coffee. So I went to both within a year, and I noticed there's a vibe where the customers feel good, the employees feel good. What are some, I guess, best practices and recommendations you have from a store level to set that kind of culture and to really put the customer in the best mood possible? Big question, but whoever wants to take it.
That is a big question. I'll try to take a stab at it. I think it starts with your overall strategy, right? And what type of experience you want to deliver to the customer. So if you and the products you sell have a big piece of that as well. I mean, when you're selling kind of more natural forward products and the way you merchandise them, it just affords it to be more of a cool experience, right? For lack of a better term. And you create that vibe and setting the tone with your teams too on what your values are and how you want to deliver the experience to the customer. Because it's not just about having a good plan. Really what drives the experience is that coupled with the team, right? The people that you bring into the store that really exude that vibe and make it a great place to shop. And not only that, it's our responsibility as leadership to make it a great place to work. Kind of starts there. I don't know if I directly answered your question, but I think that's kind of where it starts. It starts with the overall strategy, what your assortment is, what your people are doing within the store, and how you're merchandising it can create that experience.
What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, a lot of similarities. I think that for me, I always come back to the people at the store. They're really going to be the ones that are delivering that experience, and they're the first line of the customer seeing them. But it does, to Kenny's point, it happens at the leadership and works its way down and throughout the whole company. We've always had these values of taking care of each other, always doing the right thing, making sure just say yes, and those have been with us since the inception of new seasons, and we continue to just do that in our day-to-day life. We take care of each other. We make sure that we're always treating people with respect and we're doing the right thing, and that goes through to the customer as well, because people are just happier when they're working in our stores. It's all a level of scale. If you're working freight crew, it might be a little bit different, but you're throwing 1,000 cases, but we always made it very clear that, that customer comes first. And so you take a break, you go and you help the customer and you give that full experience to them.
Yeah, there's something I love about, and then we'll go to Wade. I have something to say about it. When the employee or the worker cares so much about what they're doing, they're passionate about it, and they woke up this morning and they could have two choices, like, I'm just going to punch in and punch out, go in and do the maybe not the bare minimum, but like just enough to not get fired, I guess, right? Like an Office Space type of thing, right? Just, I don't want to get noticed and get fired. And I feel like in a lot of these types of stores, these natural stores, especially Fresh Thyme and New Seasons, the employees care about what they're doing and they're passionate about it because of the culture. And like you both said, much more eloquently than I can, it really shines through and then goes and that's contagious. And then the customer feels that when the worker generally loves what they're doing, and then they're also passionate about the brands, especially in the supplement section. I noticed that especially when going into both your stores, that like you ask them, hey, where's your ginkgo biloba? They're like, ginkgo biloba, I love that stuff. Oh, my dad has it. Like they just go crazy about it. So I love that experience, and that definitely shines through to the customers as well. Wade, you had something you want to mention?
I was just going to say, I think all the organizations I've worked at, anyone that puts a focus on customer service, and sees it through and executes that, not just says it, but practices it, enforces it, is going to do a great job there. Man, there's a lot of questions here. We want to talk about Expo, but I want to touch a couple questions here that I think.
How about this one right here from Derek Lee?
Yeah, well, I've got 2 or 3 above that that I was going to hit. Yeah,
let's go in order.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm going to try and hit this, but we got to get to Expo. But I think both of these questions are good, and I'm going to ask both of them at the same time. And Kenny, we'll start with you. We'll go to Robert. So one question is from Robert Kogan. And I think it's important, especially for a lot of emerging brands. How do you perceive a brand offering a free fill as opposed to a brand with no intro incentive? That's number one. And then number 2 is from Jeff Likovsky. How important is it for a new emerging brand to have their packaging professionally dialed in before you will consider adding it on, or is that never a deal breaker? So Kenny, we'll let you answer that 2-parter there if you would.
Yeah, I'll be as concise as possible. Disclaimer on the first. Every retailer is a little bit different, right? Every retailer has requirements or expectations, and especially when it comes to margin and free fill. My personal philosophy is, especially when it comes to emerging brands, let's reinvest that to drive the business, right? So let's take that to ultimately invest, whether it be in promo or marketing, to help drive awareness of those brands. The second question, I would say I would have to say packaging should be relatively buttoned up. And what I mean by that is it needs to have all the requirements, right? It needs to be eye-catching. It needs to obviously be somewhat disruptive on shelf, because that's really important, right? Other than getting the product on shelf, it's very important to get the product off shelf, and your packaging is a part of that. Now, some retailers do have incubator programs where they may allow some more kind of on the cusp of brands and help them along. But generally speaking, your packaging should be pretty buttoned up.
I agree. Robert, how about you?
Yeah, it's like Ken and I are the same person. So I agree. I think, like he said, there's definitely requirements that we have. We do require free fill, typically speaking. That is a category by category kind of preference with buyers, and there's flexibility. And, for me, I remember this was when I was first coming back on, but for an example, like Kite Hill was coming out, and I wasn't the buyer, but I was learning from the buyer at the time. And that was one where we made some concessions there because we believed in the product, and look how well that turned out. If we would have missed on that or waited, there's missed opportunities there for sure. So it really just depends on the category manager, the category itself, the brand, and how it plays into it. If it's truly unique and emerging, what it's going to add to our category, then I think there's flexibility there for sure.
Gotcha. And then as far as the packaging, you're pretty much the same. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Got it. All right. Well, I'm going to get this next question, then we're going to Expo. Do you guys have a preferred template style for new item presentations? And I always jokingly said in my past, ditch the deck. What's your philosophy, Robert, as far as new item presentations?
Yeah, so I actually shared this on LinkedIn and in my newsletter, but we set up a 2-page, really simple presentation, and that's what we actually require when we do our category reviews now. So I do have one, and it is very simple. First page is all the logistics, like basic product information, what makes it different, gives you your ranking of the items and what kind of promo support you have. And then on the second page, it's all about current velocity. If you're in a market where you can share spins data or any kind of product specific information that will help me gauge, if I'm taking an item out that sells X amount, am I going to replace it with something that is comparable or more?
Cool. Kenny?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, I'm along the lines of ditch the deck too, but obviously we want to hear about the product. We need to learn about the product. So I think Robert hit all the key points. I always say this with any presentation. I think of these 3 words: position, direction, dimension. So giving the buyer the perspective why, the brand story, some of the product, and kind of the next steps, right? What's the merchandising plan? What's the promo plan to get it off shelf? And then how are we going to do it? How are we going to work together? And to me, it's very broad, but that I think if you follow that kind of philosophy, and it does depend on the buyer, it does depend on the retailer, you'll find success in all likelihood.
Right. Gotcha. I do have one follow-up. I know we need to get to the Expo West subject. The one follow-up that I think a lot of founders, VP of sales, just want to hear directly from you both. A recent presentation that has really blown you away. What were some elements in that presentation when you walked away from it, said that was impressive, so that we can learn from that and put that into our presentations when we're presenting to both of you? So what are some recommendations that have worked for you in the past? That could be, and then we'll start with Kenny.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Alex. I would say what's always blown me away is when a brand does their homework, right? They do their due diligence. They understand the retailer's strategy. They understand the market, and they put together a plan based on what they feel could be what value their product could bring or brand could bring to their category, right? So going as far as to go into the store, take a look at the planogram, see how it could fit, putting together recommendations for merchandising, coming in with a fully baked plan that fits within the overall strategy through the research that they did, even coming down to marketing and all that good stuff. I really feel like the preparation is key, and really understanding, the retailer's overall strategy and doing that due diligence. That always impresses me because it just shows the commitment that they have to partner. So I think, to me, that's really what's always been kind of my okay, this is someone that I think we could partner with just through, again, the due diligence that they've done prior to presenting. Because that's the question you need to ask before you even go to the retailer. Should I be presenting to this respective retailer? Is it going to be the right partner for me? I know doors are alluring, but you want to partner with a retailer that's really going to foster your brand, right? So it's hard, I get it, but slow growth is always the best methodology.
Yeah, it's always tempting, just to slam the product in there, get in more doors, appease investors, grow revenue. But it's one of the biggest mistakes that brands make, right? Is that they go into a retailer that they're not ready for, or it's not going to resonate with the consumer, or they don't have the capital or resources to support it, right? With proper promotions and having salespeople go in there to check, build relationships at store levels. So I see that happen more than it should. But obviously these are really, really good tips to prevent that from happening in the future. Robert, anything to add on the subject?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much echo the idea of just making sure that you're not just filling out the deck just to fill out the deck, and you understand why it is you're actually presenting to that store and what you add to that category. So, if you are leaning in on, like, assuming you know that you're a good fit, they're a good fit, like, where do you actually differentiate? Is it that you're playing for value, or is it playing for specialty? How do you actually stand out in that category? And can you, to Kenny's point, if you get in, you take pictures, you research and look at the stores and the items in the mix, can you actually call out clear examples like, oh, I noticed your cold brew coffee set didn't have this type of matcha latte, or whatever it may be. That is a very clear example that they did their homework and they were able to present that in a way that makes it easy for me to recognize there's an opportunity there.
I love that. I love that. That's great. And these questions keep coming and coming. We probably should have either an expanded episode today or a double quadruple episode. We need to get to Expo because that's what we promised everybody we were going to talk about. But we could keep going on these subjects for days. So when we talk about Expo, it's the granddaddy of them all. It's like WrestleMania. It's like the Super Bowl. It's everything all wrapped up in one. And we were talking a little bit before we went on the air about a post that I made last year with regards to some of the things that either not to do, etc. And I think from a starting perspective, I think there's this misconception that whether I'm working from a broker side or a buyer side, that I should be able to schedule all these meetings, that you as a buyer will take all these meetings while you're at Expo. I'd like to talk about each year's philosophy with regards to that concept with I'm a brand, I'm not in your store yet, but I'm very interested. And talk to me about meetings and your schedule during Expo. Are you taking meetings? If you are taking meetings, what are the barriers or the parameters with that? Is it a brand you already have? Is it a new brand that's interested in you? Talk about that piece as far as meetings at Expo. So Robert, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah, the first part of our week for new seasons has always been meetings. So we do a lot of our back half promotional planning at Expo. So we huddle up in the Hilton. Usually, this year it's a little different because it's a shorter time window for the show, but we're usually there from Monday to Thursday. This year it's Monday through Wednesday. We will schedule meetings with some of our key current suppliers that need to finish our back half promotional planning. And there's a little bit of room in there for if a broker has a new brand, they certainly ask us, and hey, we've got this new brand that's going to be at Expo. Can you see them? That happens a little bit, but typically speaking, it's not going to happen as often as you think. And when I'm walking the floor, especially at Expo, it's such a large footprint and so much going on. I'm not going to pigeonhole myself into, I've got to be across at the basement at 12:30 and figuring out, if I'm at the North Hall, setting alarms and making sure that I can walk over there to meet somebody. Now, having said that, if brands reach out and they have some clear, opportunities that maybe I really do want to meet with them, I'm not necessarily going to set a time per se, but I'll give them get general guidance, ask for their booth, and make sure that when I stop by, I know who I could talk to. That that I can, actually get the direct conversation going with.
Good.
Yeah. And I want to add one thing too that Robert really touched on, is make sure that someone is at the booth that can talk with the buyers. Like that is one of the biggest also mistake where, a founder, right, a co-founder needs to take a break, right? They can't be there 24/7. But if a founder leaves, make sure a VP of sales is there. If the VP of sales is not there, make sure one of the founders is there, vice versa. So that's just something very, very crucial because you miss your opportunity. The buyer is going to be walking to other booths for other meetings. So anyway, let's keep going.
Kenny, meetings, Expo.
Yeah. So our week is very, very jam-packed, similar to Robert's. Historically, we've done a Tuesday meeting room, very similar promo planning, but honestly, it was getting stale. So shameless plug here. We're doing something a little bit different. We are going to be putting on a pitch slam from 8 to noon on the Tuesday the 4th. I keep getting thrown off about the days because Expo's now a day shorter. So that information is actually posted on LinkedIn. So all that are interested, brands that are interested, the application period is open.
Where's that going to be located?
It's going to be located at the Hilton. So all the info is actually right on LinkedIn. There's an application form, has all the necessary info. So we're really focused on new and emerging brands, right? So we're a mid-sized chain natural retailer, and that's really the impetus of Expo West. Yes, we want to connect with existing brands, say hello to 60,000 of our closest friends and family. But honestly, we're foraging for new and new item discovery and fostering new brands and trends because that's what the customer expects out of us. So we don't really plan a lot of scheduled meetings for the same kind of rationale that Robert mentioned. We want to walk the show in its entirety. And we have a limited amount of time. Time is our biggest resource, and our teams are outside of their typical day-to-day. And that's really what our focus is. So though we don't schedule many meetings, there are some exceptions where if a brand reaches out, similar to Robert, yes, we can meet at the booth. But honestly, there's not really a scheduled time. It's like, yeah, I'll come, at one given point. Because what happens at Expo, I mean, we're all running a little bit behind and we all run out of time. And quite honestly, when you try to schedule meetings, it just impacts the overall experience because then you're rushing through certain conversations. You may miss things. So to your point, Alex, I was going to mention that. Be at the booth. Be present at the booth because you never know who's going to stop by and you need to have somebody there because there's been sometimes I've walked by a booth, there's no one at the booth. Or they're not engaged. They're on their phone. They're on their laptop. They're worried what's going on back at the ranch. And that's the importance of having a good team, right? Get a good team in place to help take care of those things because your job's to be at the show, to connect with prospective buyers, brands alike. Take the time. It's take the time.
And I think that's a good segue into, we touched on that a little bit before the show as well. I think it's a good segue into the next question I had for you with regards to, I don't talk about booth design and things that are going to draw your attention. What I want to talk about is you're walking the aisles and you see something that potentially you're interested in. Again, aesthetics aside, you stop to talk to someone and what is going to, what are you looking to draw out of that engagement, of that interaction? What do you want to hear? What do you want to see outside of, whether it's something caught your eye, the product itself, an attribute, a taste that you've had? What do you want to hear from the salesperson in the booth to further the conversation?
Yeah, a little bit about the brand story, their reason for being. That's always kind of important. And again, in my role, it's a little bit different, right? So I lead the team now, so it's a little bit of a different perspective. But if I put kind of my category manager hat on, it's the attributes, what makes the product unique. What draws my eye is, if it's an item or a brand that's eye-catching, but maybe brings something different to the category. So really taking that kind of quick elevator to go through your product, what makes it unique, what makes it different, what's the ingredient deck look like, and just kind of bridge that conversation. It's pretty simple, Wade.
Yeah. Is that, Robert, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think I prioritize just a little bit differently. So before I try to get into the brand story, I think it's important, but I don't want that to be the first thing because if I don't see an opportunity or a way that I can get that to market or be on shelf, then it's kind of a moot point and I do have other time that I can be there. So it's really kind of getting them to ask me questions and figuring out between the two of us, we're going back and forth on, I obviously at this point, like to your point, I understand the product a little bit. the attributes, maybe that's what pulled me in. So I ask some of those questions about the product itself and then lean into, where are you currently selling, what distributor you use. If they're not currently set up with UNFI, then that could become a challenge unless it's something that I want to activate the DC for. And if it is, then that leads me into asking those deeper questions about the brand itself and how it got started and what going into where I think sometimes the reps they can get cut loose, and like they just go on. So I think, like I don't want that to happen at the very beginning. I'd rather have that happen, which happen at the end, which I'm like super into hearing those stories and the conversations around that, but I just don't want to do it at the very beginning if I know that it's not going to lead anywhere.
Right.
So you mentioned activating the DC, and I want to touch on that real quick because both of you are large enough to activate a DC, and I want to know, and this is kind of outside of Expo, but it pertains to Expo as well. What is your mindset with being the activator of a DC? What makes you want to do it or not want to do it as far as that goes? Robert, let's stay with you.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to that product and how it fits into the category. If there's a need for it in the category, then I have no problem activating it. When there's kind of borderline, if it's very unique or specialty, there's maybe some hesitancy and I might wait just a little bit because I know that if it's only our volume and it's an item that doesn't turn as much, UNFI might have some strict movement requirements that it could get cut pretty quick. And I don't want the brand to go through that whole process and funding all of the intra requirements and with us and UNFI and then have to, be cut because we can't keep up with the turns. So seeing a little bit of broad appeal to where other independents or retailers in the market can also pull from that and, just making sure that the brand has ways to get into those other retailers once we activate it too. So whether that's broker or the UNFI reps sending out their information as well.
Yeah, I think that's great, Robert. I'm thinking along the same lines. I mean, it's always great. It's always tempting to be first to market, right? And be fast, but not at the expense of the success of the brand. Because to your point, working with one of those larger distributors, there's a cost to entry. And if it's not going to work, it's going to be very costly to the brand. So it's a balance, right? And sometimes, the data may not be there and we have to use our intuition to say, yeah, we're going to activate this. But more often than not, if it's something that's going to add incrementality to the category, yes, we'll go after it. If it's a little bit more on the cusp, we may encourage the brand to go a different route, or we'll wait until we kind of see it more in market. Because to your point, Robert, we don't want that to happen to the brand, and they pay that high cost for entry to get into the distribution facility, and it just doesn't work.
Yep. There's a couple comments I have. I've been actually writing notes down here because as the conversation moves on, I don't want to lose some of the points that were said earlier that I want to reemphasize because we're going through a lot of this quickly. I do like, Robert, what you said about front loading in a conversation. Will this even work or not? Right. It's always good to discover brands. It's always good to go out there. And I agree with Kenny too, like the brand story, but getting the brand story too many times, it will be exhausting, right? Like every single brand, and it just takes so long. So I think I like Kenny's strategy. The right brand, this could work. Go for the brand story, get the full impact and experience so you know who you're working with and what kind of brand you're dealing with to see if it could actually be successful at your stores. But on the other side, I also like what Robert said, which is let's just see if it works first because we're all in a hurry. We all have limited time. There's a lot of booths to see, a lot of buyers to talk to, a lot of brands to talk to. So getting that prerequisite out of the way, I think, is really crucial before going down the path of extended conversation. One thing also that I wanted to mention is I'm from the brand side, right? From the past, I ran Genius Juice for too long. And so with all that said, it gets really exhausting from the founder's perspective of running a booth for 3 days. I am more of an introvert, which is surprising since I co-host a podcast here, but I'm introverted. And so, yes, I like to talk, I like to conversate, but I like to recover alone. I don't like to recover going out with friends or whatever, or talking with people. I'm like, everyone leave me alone. I need to recover. And I remember in 2019 in North Hall, across from Once Upon a Farm and Impossible. We were in the center of it all. And by day 3, and I was at the booth all 3 days, including setup, the day before and then break down the day after. And I was extremely burned out on day 3. And it was hard for me to even talk with people. Like your body just shuts you down. Like you cannot push through it no matter how excited you are mentally. Your body's like, no, we're stopping this right now. You're done. Go home and go rest. I felt that way on day 3. And so what was valuable is I had really good salespeople at my booth that understood the brand almost as deeply as me, right? Maybe even as deep, maybe even more than me. And so just remember, as a founder, important advice is set up a schedule to take breaks. Like just set up a time, maybe once an hour, once every 3 hours, and let your team know what your schedule is. Say, hey, I got to go out and go for a walk outside and get some sun. I got to go out and get something to eat. Just, be on the same page as your team on your breaks. But as the founder and driving force behind your brand, you need to take those breaks intermittently, or else you're just going to burn out. And then you won't be able to hold a really valuable conversation, right, with a buyer, especially if a big opportunity comes up. There is a question here that I knew was going to be asked, and it's a very classic question, right? And you guys are smiling. I think the question, right? Like, what are you looking for this year? So we'll address it. We'll address it. It's a classic question. And then Wade, I want to hear your thoughts as well, because you're in the buyer seat for many years. But what new categories, items, ingredients are you guys excited about? And whoever wants to grab that question.
Yeah, this one, it's always an interesting one because, with my categories, I do all of the refrigerated grocery. We typically start seeing the trend before Expo. So, protein is such a huge aspect right now. And of course, there's no way not to see it. So that's on my radar. But, where I think the interesting part for me is that I kind of want to be surprised by products that when I like true innovation, like I don't want to go into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to go find some protein items. Like I want to find the new thing, not necessarily the thing that everybody's talking about. Like how many years did we see how many different plant-based chicken bites and plant-based anything or mushroom jerky? It's like the market kind of creates this trend in a way, but there's so much saturation to it. And I think for me, of course, protein's going to be on my list, but that's because I'm not going to be able to stay away from it. Like any booth I go to is going to have some kind of like protein attribute. I think for me, like I said, true innovation, I get asked this question, like, what innovative product do you want to look at? And I don't know. Like, that's not my wheelhouse. So I want to be surprised when I come up to a booth and see something truly innovative. I can't tell you exactly what I want in this category because it's not really truly innovative if I'm just saying like, yeah, I need an extra protein this, or I need an extra low sugar, yogurt in this category, or whatever it may be. It's always been a challenging question for me. So I don't know if I fully answered it the way the person was expecting, but
so I think you're less about, there's categories and there's trends, but you're more about the brand and what value it brings to your set. Am I understanding that correctly? Like it's really case by case.
Yeah. I think the brand should be able to draw me in by what it can offer to my category. But going into it knowing that I'm going to look for certain things, I try to not get myself down a certain rabbit hole of some sorts.
Kenny, what do you think?
Yeah, it's always a difficult question. It's actually a loaded question, right? Because there's two parts, as Robert said. Like, right. I would tell you personally, we do just enough preparation to understand where our opportunities are, voids, categories, brands, down to the item level. But we do just not enough preparation to be able to kind of explore, because ultimately we want to discover what's new, what on the cusp trends that we may or may not necessarily consider for that year, but what we could potentially see 2, 3, 5 years down the road. But when I think about like the space just in general, I mean, obviously an overall focus on general wellness and emotional health, that's pretty prevalent right now. And as we talk about like the non-elk space, that's continuously growing too. It's interesting to see like a lot of the functional ingredients, like things like L-theanine and ashwagandha, start to kind of make it over on the food side. So we're seeing this convergence of wellness and overall nutrition, sustainability, whether it be sourcing and regenerative agriculture. These are not brand new, right? But sometimes it's good to see trends that have been kind of in our space for the last 2 to 3 years start to take hold. That's a good thing as they're starting to develop. So of course, I didn't really directly answer the question, but I would say like we're looking to continue to build emerging kind of sub trends and categories, but we're really trying to discover new, to be honest with you, because if it's something that we in all likelihood, we probably have already seen it prior to Expo. We're looking for things that we maybe haven't seen quite yet. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. And I know we're being tight on time. We got one question we have to ask before we end the show, and that is follow-up. Best way, you're excited about something. Expo ends on Friday. You go back to the office. You're back home. How do brands follow up? What's best practice?
It must be wonderful if you get an email on your way to the airport 4 hours after the show, right? It must feel amazing to see that, right?
Yeah. So Kenny, best practice.
Being sarcastic.
Yeah, a couple things. And I might be a little bit new school, but no paper presentations. I'm sorry. We don't have space in our carry-ons for those things. And I just can't stand throwing things away, to be honest with you. I really can't. And I don't think my cleaning lady wants to learn about plant-based meat. So keep those at the booth. Please, in all due respect. And save a little bit of money. No need to print. Have a QR code to allow the buyers to scan that, because you know what they can do? They can bookmark it. And then they'll probably create a folder. I know Robert's super organized, right? He's going to have a folder that he's going to go back to, and he's going to take a look at all these opportunities. Paper cards, sorry, those go into my coat pocket and get into the wash. So if you have a QR code or contact information, I'll definitely write that down or take pictures, but try to avoid that, to be honest with you. I would say follow up, like everyone's eager to follow up, like right after they get out of the booth, or that like Monday after Expo. I think what folks do need to understand too is category managers, they're running a business, right? So when they're away from the office, it's not just about scouting for new items. They need to take care of the stores, need to take care of operational opportunities that may have came up while they were at the show. So give a couple days, give anywhere between kind of that, 36, 48 hours, even the end of that first week. Send a quick email in the subject, really quick, send the product deck. I find that to be the kind of best way to follow up, and allow the team to follow up on their own time. If the buyer was truly interested, they will follow up with you. Don't try to go the day after and say, hey, did you see my email? Third day later, third request. It's just not going to work, and you're going to probably rub the buyer the wrong way, because keep in mind, you're sending them an email. They're probably getting hundreds of other emails as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that last point was where I think there's a lot of good opportunity, especially, and it depends on where you're at with which level of brand. But if you're a brand with a broker, make sure, like, brokers are so great for the support in that regard, where they can group their follow-ups together. And that's a huge benefit, to be able to see, okay, here's the information from this brand, this brand, this brand. And then to Kenny's point, I was talking to, I don't know where I saw it, LinkedIn or in my community, but there was somebody that said the Wednesday or Thursday after is kind of like the sweet spot, I think, for getting that email to go out. And that timing is really important. Like Kenny mentioned, we're not just going to Expo, foraging, and it depends on what kind of person you're talking to, but the majority of us have a business to run. We're doing other things. And also we've been gone for a week, where we've been outside of our normal day-to-day routine. And so while we're at Expo, we have stores emailing, asking us, there's fires going on, there's distribution issues that we have to take care of. And then we get back and there's more of that. So it's like, that timing is probably the biggest thing, but then the consistent follow-up after that. Say you wait until Thursday, you send your email, wait a week. If you don't hear anything, go ahead and follow up again, and continue to follow up. it's persistent. It's nothing personal. If for whatever reason I don't get back to you on the third email, it's really sometimes those emails get buried. And, with all of the different people we talked about, if there's 50 to 100 people responding back to us trying to get this follow up on top of the stores, on top of the internal projects that we're doing, it just happens. And don't feel bad about doing the continuous follow up, but until you get that hard no, like, no, I'm not interested, I don't want to pursue this anymore.
Nice.
Yep, very well said. All right, we're going to move to the we have a couple minutes, 1 minute left here. We're going to move to the prize, and it's going to be quick. So we're going to do a trivia question, and this episode is sponsored by Powerful Energy Distribution, and a little bit about them. They have a focus on Expo 2025. PFE is focused on the Melting Forest brand with the CPG Vibes Expo show at the Melting Forest booth. Robert, thanks for the shout out for that. The prize is 2 mixed cases, one with 3 of each of the energy flavors and one with 3 of each of the de-stress flavors. And just very quickly, what is Powerful Energy? They're a binational company that handles imports, exports for commodity brands and emerging specialty brands. Their expertise is limiting the real and invisible barriers to the 40 million Canadian market. And I will mention, too, that Robert Kogan is keeping closely up to date on the tariff situation, being in Canada and the tariffs between U.S. and Canada. He's posting at least once a week about it. We're going to bring him back on the show to talk about the tariffs. There's definitely going to be a Canadian-centered show sometime in March or April. But just keep an eye on what Robert Kogan is posting, because very pertinent to what's going on from the government right now and in the news. So it's good stuff. So Wade,
I've got a question.
I've got a question. Let's do it.
Courtesy of Hugh Curtis, who is not going to answer this
Courtesy
question.
of Hugh Curtis.
He
I like that.
it.
Courtesy of Curtis.
He submitted it to me. So, and it's pertaining to Kenny and what Fresh Time is doing at Expo. So they're doing a pitch slam. The question is, what hotel is the Fresh Time pitch slam happening at? What hotel is the Fresh Time pitch slam happening at? Hugh, thank you. Appreciate that. That should be relatively easy if you've been paying attention. Guys, I can't thank you enough while we're waiting for the answer. I want to commend both of you for, first of all, for being on the show. Thank you for it. But secondly, and I've had this conversation, I think, with Gavin offline with regards to people contributing in the community. There's not many buyers, category managers, people in your positioning giving back like you are. And I commend you both for it. I encourage you to keep doing it because you're making a difference. You're educating people and you're giving back. And it's so important. There aren't people doing it. You are. Thank you for what you do. Guys, I'm waiting for this to come in. Haven't had an answer yet, but I'll let Kenny, any closing remarks while we're waiting for an answer?
No, I appreciate that, Wade. And I appreciate being on the show and what you guys do for this community. I mean, I've been a long follower of CPG Vibes back in the days of Friday Vibes, waking up at 4:30 in the morning in Hawaii to watch the show. And, being on the islands was a great experience, but I did feel a little disconnected from folks, and getting to watch you guys and interact with the community helped me reconnect a little bit. And it's the least I can do. This industry has done so much for me, so much for my family. I truly believe and I'm passionate about it. And quite honestly, I feel like I could be doing more, right? And giving back is just the least we can do for this wonderful industry that's given so much to each of us. So thank you.
Robert, any closing remarks? We don't have an answer yet. Where's the pitch slam? Where's the pitch slam for Fresh Time? There's only so many hotels. Name one.
There, got it.
Okay.
Hotel California.
Robert, any closing remarks?
I just want to say thank you for having us on. And likewise, like Kenny said, thank you for what you do, both of you. And, it's interesting because, first time actually having a conversation with you, both of you, after seeing you on LinkedIn for so long. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to collab in the future and, keep this train rolling with giving back.
Excellent. Well, evidently Gavin got it. Didn't come up.
I didn't see it, but they're all saying he got it. So.
Gavin, you got it. So you know the drill. Email cpgvibes100@gmail.com.
Okay, great. Well, again, I echo everything that Wade said, and I won't try to one-up him. That really thank you guys for coming on, spending the time, offering expertise and advice. And you're both like just two down-to-earth dudes. Just love having you on here, and we're definitely going to bring you back. So thank you again for being on our show. And next week we have, I'm going to look it up. I know, Wade, I'm behind on my side, but we have our just traditional episode. It's going to be me and Wade. There's a bunch of back-to-back series episodes, but next week is just me and Wade. And then make sure to tune into the CPG Vibes Newswire. That's one of our newest features there. That pops up a couple times a week. Make sure to give us 5 stars. And thank you guys again for everything. Really appreciate all the time you spent on the show here to help us. And we will see you guys next week, Friday, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock Eastern. Take care, everyone.
Yes. Bye.